That's the guy that we came to see. Make some noise for him.
I gotta tell you, this has been like, maybe the #1 convention I've ever done. I don't go to very many of them, and they told me that this one was just awesome, that the fans were off the hook, and everybody was great. I would meet a lot of like-minded people that are into horror, like myself, and it did not disappoint me. You guys are awesome. I loved how many people dressed up last night, and I apologize if I got too drunk and groped anybody or did any kind of Crypt Keepers type things.
You're welcome.
I did wake up in my own clothes in my hotel room, which was great to hear. And if somebody kissed me on the dance floor, they were very tall, and I did worry whether it was a guy or a girl because I was dressed up. But people assured me she was a girl. So I don't know. Anyway.
If you walk away with that mental assurance, that's all that matters.
That's all that matters, it's true. Unless there are pictures. Everybody posts things these days.
They are probably on the internet already.
Yeah, I know. Anyway, I started out loving horror since I was a kid. I collected Tales from the Crypt comic books as a kid, original ones, and I used to have back then they used to believe that, as a lot of people know, they used to believe they caused juvenile delinquency. And mothers across America tried to get them banned, tried to get the Senate, to, yeah, I know, right? And there you go, proof in the pudding. And
Cover your ears.
Is it working? Am I scaring you? Attention, she can disappear to there. So my mother used to take them, and so I started hiding them in my box full of Casper comics that I had. I remember after getting Tales from the Crypt, I came back to visit my parents in Baltimore and went running down the basement to find out where my box of comics were. And I said, Mom, where's my box of comics? Oh, I gave them to some kid down the street. And I was like, you have any idea how much those Crypt Keeper comic books are worth? Especially since I can sign them? She had no idea. She's, they cause juvenile delinquency. So there you go. But I think my favorite as a kid were the Universal horror, the original movies. Somebody told me this weekend that they saw Frankenstein and the Bride of Frankenstein this last week on the big screen, which would be a real treat because I usually got to see them on a thing called Twilight Movie that was on every afternoon in Baltimore when I was growing up. And they would do everything from Doris Day movies to Mothra, and then they spattered in there. They would have Abbott and Costello meets Frankenstein, which is still my favorite comedy. And of course, Frankenstein, Dracula, the Mummy, Wolfman, all the Boris Karloff stuff too. I grew up in Baltimore. I got my degree in theater at Towson, which is now called Towson University. Back then it was Towson State. I went to school with people like Charles Dutton, who a lot of you know as Rock from the series Rock, and a great actor who had come out of the Maryland State Penitentiary to come do theater, when I was there in college. And they went on to go to the Yale Drama School. We used to say he had to write his memoirs from jail to Yale. But he's done really well for himself as an actor. And John Glover went to Towson. He used to come back and do some great workshops with us when I was a young student. And if any of you guys watched Dexter, Eric King, who was in the first, great show?
Yeah.
Eric King, who was in the first season, played the Afro-American detective who was always,
Jokes.
We went to college together. So there's some really great people at the school there. So I got some good training. Moved to New York to do my first off-Broadway show. It closed after 3 weeks. Yeah, I think I was getting paid $175 a week, which was the, off-Broadway standard at that point, 1980 really. And I didn't want to get a real job. I wanted to pursue my dream, even at the cost of not getting it, you know. So I would get up on Saturday and Sunday mornings, put on a white face. It was, quite proficient as a pantomime, and would go out in front of the Metropolitan Museum on Fifth Avenue, in front of the big steps that came down from the museum, and wait when people came out of the museum, and I would climb a building that was across the street. For years they were redoing the face of this building, and they had scaffolding, so I'd climb up it and hang a big banner. People could see me from blocks away, and they'd come running and sit on the steps, and I would street perform out in the middle of Manhattan and pass the hat, and make a couple of $100 to $600, which was much better than
Better than on Broadway. Yeah.
And supported myself that way in between theater jobs, and worked with that monkey is freaking me out, or whatever that is on your shoulder. It's so cool. I love the way that you don't let him go to sleep, you make him move the whole time. It's a commitment. So I was with a comedy group out of Baltimore called Animal Crackers, and we were kind of like a Baltimore's version of Second City. And we did sketch comedy and that kind of thing, so I had a background in that. And so we did USO tours all over the world, got to, perform for US troops as a comedy troupe, doing comedy. It was a lot of fun. Got to see overseas, got to see the world, which was really amazing. It was an amazing thing. And then while I was in New York, things started to branch out a little bit. I got a part in an off-Broadway show called Three Guys Naked from the Waist Down. I didn't get to keep my pants on most of the show. It was a musical about stand-up comedians, and it starred myself and the beloved Scott Bakula. A lot of you guys know from Quantum Leap and Enterprise and those kind of shows. And a guy named Jerry Colker who wrote the piece, and it was about 3 stand-up comics, and they were kind of misfits, and they were talented at what they did, but the 3 of them together became like an overnight success. And then it was the second act was all about the trappings of Hollywood, going from New York as stand-up comedians. They got their own show called Hello Fellas, about 3 cops in drag. And of course, my character winds up committing suicide. It's so bad. And I got a lot of attention for it. It was a big hit off Broadway in New York. And while I was doing the show, some talent scouts from a show that just started called Star Search came on. And it's hosted by Ed McMahon. And I was like, we want you to come on and be a stand-up comedian. And I'm like, I'm just playing the part, right? I'm not really a stand-up comedian. They said, you can win $100,000. I went, shit, I'm not a stand-up comedian. So, with my sketch comedy background and having done street performing, I, started writing these, we had to fill like 2.5 minutes of material. I started writing like these specific sketches of material. I would do like The Wizard of Oz in 2 minutes, As coroner, I must get her, I call the examiner, we represent I would do all these different characters in my act, and I kept winning, I won, like 5-6 times, and I was automatically pushed into the semifinals, and came up against a short, ballsy female stand-up comic by the name of Rosie O'Donnell, and I beat her in the semifinals. And then I came up against a big, broad guy in a big red suit named Sinbad, and beat him in the finals. And I won $100,000 going from street performing. I remember them having Tom Jones as a guest on the show, and they go, we have a surprise for John Kassir. He's going to open for Tom Jones in Vegas. And I'm like, I have no fucking act. How am I going to open for Tom Jones in Vegas?
How many 2-minute segments did you have at that point?
I wound up 14 minutes of material. You know,
With $100,000, you can afford a writer.
like, you know, how do you write for that kind of comedy? You know, it's like I really wasn't a guy that stood up there and told jokes, and monology was not my thing. You know, I used to love to sit in the back of the room in the comedy clubs and watch, you know, your Bill Maher's and Jerry Seinfeld. They were just starting out, watching these guys, Gilbert Gottfried, you know, all these who nobody got. Started out the first time I saw him, he did the entire act to the wall. I want you to meet somebody. I want you to do, you know. And the comedians in the back were laughing their ass off, and the audience just did not get it, you know. It took him a long time to, you know, for people to start getting him, but that was my favorite thing to do, was to sit in the back and watch these guys work. As I went into the club, started working on an act. So I could, you know, wound up going on the road opening for the Temptations and the Four Tops on their TNT tour, and Lou Rawls, you know, for 5,000 people at the Michigan State, you know, in this huge theater, this kind of thing. And eventually, you know, worked up a nice solid 20 minutes is what you needed as an opening act. And eventually started getting offered a headline, and which I needed to have like an hour and 10 minutes. You know, not an easy thing to do. A lot of comedians, you know, coast off of talking to the audience. I remember my first headlining gig in Columbia, South Carolina. And some guy named Robo owned this comedy club down there, and he had me come down for Memorial Day weekend. I was going to headline for 3 days, you know. And I came down there and, you know, came out and I started getting hecklers. All these guys are like, "Yee, hey, get off the stage." And I didn't know how to handle hecklers. And so I continued through my act. I'm like, dude, it's not that kind of act. Just relax, okay? If I had like spraying beers at me and stuff, I'm like, dude, don't make me get the management. We are the management. It was all over the club. It was Robo and his friends. So that was my first headlining gig. But I eventually got it all together. You know, eventually we get into the comedy clubs and worked up an act and worked up the presence to be able to talk to the audience specifically, and you know, started getting like a very much you know, oh, you're the next Robin Williams kind of thing. You know, which was a big shoes to even begin to try to fill. So that's when I started auditioning for a lot of things in LA. I moved to LA at that point and got my first series called First and 10.
Yeah.
Which is HBO's first series about a football team. I played the Bulgarian field goal kicker. Zagreb Shkinitsky. He could kick 60-yard field goals. And the team was Delta Burke. Owned the team. She was learning how to become an owner. She had won the team at a divorce settlement in the story. And O.J. Simpson was the general manager. Yes, I worked with O.J. for 7 years. Who knew? I never saw him sharpening the blade. But you know, wound up doing that show, and they shot during the summer, so I was always able to, you know, audition during pilot season, and got another series called FM. That was a short-lived series that Alan Burns would create around Tyler Moore, created with Robert Hayes and Patricia Richardson and James Avery and all these great actors. It was a lot of fun, and that's how I started building my career. The way I got Tales from the Crypt was having been known as this. What the hell is calling me? Hey, darling, I'm doing a Q&A right now. Everybody say hi. Hi! I'll call you later. Bye.
He calls his manager darling. Keeps it friendly.
Thanks. Earth, baby. I should have found out if it was an emergency before I did this.
If there was crying or pleading.
I live in a wooded area out in the mountains over Malibu, and there's fires there all the time. There's these found out if like the house was on fire or something. My border collies had run over there or something. I don't know. Get up to my dogs. Anyway, where was I? The way I got Tales from the Crypt was, you know, I began to be known as this comedian actor who did all these voices and did all these, you know, great characters. And so I got invited down with a select few people to come audition. There was people like Michael Winslow, who you guys know from the Police Academy movies, and Charlie Flesher, who was the voice of Roger Rabbit, who was in Demon Knight, you know. Particularly talented and strange guy. And Rick Overton, if you guys are comedian fans, is a great actor, comedian, and all these different people. And having known the comic books, you know, I knew the tone of it. And I remember all these guys looking at the script confused and seeing all these puns, and they're going, God, this is really bad, you know? And I'm thinking, you guys don't get it, you love saying this stuff, you know? So I went in, and it was the auditions were at Kevin Yeager's studio, and for those of you who don't know Kevin Yeager, of course you probably will. Please give my hand. He's an amazing feature maker, but of course amazing director, and Phantasm 2, and a bunch of other stuff. But directed all the Crypt Keeper sequences, which were just like always the best. You know, could very often be the best part of the show. And he was creating the Crypt Keeper in his studio. And a lot of you that know Kevin also know that he created the more modern look of on Robert Englund for Freddy, and also created Chucky, made the animatronic doll of Chucky, and so was hired to do the Crypt Keeper. He had a couple of different versions, some with a nose, some without a nose, you know, kind of thing, and that kind of thing when I went into his studio. And it was funny, a lot of people don't know this, but those baby blue eyes that the Crypt Keeper have are Chucky eyes. Because, you know, they didn't, you know, when you first start a show, especially on HBO, they don't give you as big of a budget, so